On this episode of the OurView Podcast, I'm joined by my guest, Nico Meyering. Nico lives with Congenital Central Hypoventilation Syndrome, also known as CCHS. Join our conversation as Nico shares his experience of living with CCHS and how it impacts his daily life. So I would like to welcome everyone back to another episode of the OurView Podcast, where we aim to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. I am very excited to have my guest on with me today, Nico. Thank you so much for joining me. And we have discovered something in the pre-interview time that we are actually neighbors. We live we live fairly close to each other, different states, but we're fairly close to each other. So that was really cool to find out. But Nico, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Arthur.
Yeah. So I start off all my podcasts by asking my guests to introduce themselves. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what your medical diagnosis is, and how it impacts your life? But also tell us things beyond that, because I want to give a full representation of my guests and things that they like to do for fun or hobbies or any hobbies that they may have. So feel free to share as much as you would like.
Fantastic, thank you. Hi, world. My name is Nico Meyering. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm coming to you today from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I live with my girlfriend, our dog, and our cat. So perhaps you'll hear the dog or less likely the cat during this interview. And for that, I apologize. But I'm 33 years old. I work full-time for the University of Pennsylvania, and I live with a rare and lifelong medical condition called Congenital Central Hypoventilation Syndrome, or CCHS. Contrary to what its acronym might lead you to believe, CCHS is not about a high school or anything like that. CCHS is a rare and lifelong medical condition caused by a genetic mutation. So our automatic impulse to breathe is suppressed, remarkably so. In some cases, that impulse is entirely absent. Like every genetic mutation, how that presents differs from one body to the next. So if you've seen one CCHS case, you've seen one CCHS case. Some of us also have issues with our hearts, our temperature control, our digestive function, and sometimes our vision. Any function that is controlled or influenced by our autonomic nervous system is something that CCHS will impact. Now, the most obvious sign of my disability is that when I'm sleeping or napping, or when I'm particularly ill, I do use mechanical ventilation. And I will have to use mechanical ventilation my entire life until we have more effective treatments or even a cure. Even though I have managed to build a modest but comfortable life for myself, where my daily medical needs are not very intrusive. This is not the case for everyone with a disability, and it's not the case for everyone with CCHS. My parents raised me with a focus on education and empowerment and achieving at a high level professionally, academically, and personally. And to them for that, rather, I am indebted a great amount. I feel like I do have a responsibility to help other disabled people, and especially younger disabled people, right? And I've gained this perspective as I've transitioned from like young adulthood to where I am now, which is creeping into middle age. Again, I'm 33. So the fact of the matter that we have to face is that disabled people are more likely to be unemployed. We're more likely to be underemployed. we're more likely to live in poverty, and we're more likely to fall into substance abuse, domestic abuse. There are some markers and milestones by which disabled people are seen to have greater difficulty than their able-bodied peers. So that means that it falls to me and it falls to other disabled adults to be advocates not only for ourselves, but also for each other and for the next generation, to quote Star Trek. I always say that I want my ceiling to be the next generation's floor. I want kids out there who might be listening to this or whose parents might be listening to this to reach life's milestones faster and more easily than I did. So that's kind of why I do what I do.
That's
Uh,
great. That's
Thank
really
you.
great. I think that, and I'm older than you. I'm 40, so I definitely agree with what you just said at the end there. To see the younger generations reach, to see the younger generations reach things faster than I did, and
Right.
it is so great to see that. So many conversations are happening through social media these days. When I was 20 and 21 years old in high school, Instagram wasn't there, and Facebook was just barely there when I was in college or ending college, I forget. But
Mhm.
to have all of these social media platforms where your audiences can be worldwide, literally at your fingertips, and your message can get out, to the masses, and even through platforms like this, through a podcast, where we have the potential of this conversation reaching around the globe to so many people. I think that the advocacy work that you're doing, and how you choose to do that, and the advocacy work that I'm doing and how I choose to do that, everything, and other people that are doing advocacy work, every
Right.
bit of it is important. And I'm so, I'm so grateful that you are, at your age, have taken on that mission to really help. And I love, again, what you said, that your ceiling is the next generation's floor, so they can
We hope
really
so. Yeah.
start from where we are, and move forward, because I've seen so many things improve in the world of disabilities in general, and even in with my condition with spina bifida. Back when I was born in 1981, they didn't have what is called a fetal surgery. That wasn't
Right.
available back then, 40 years ago. But ever since, the last 20 or so years, they can do surgery to help improve the life of children who will be born with spina bifida before they're born. They can do a
Right.
fetal surgery. So just to see those advances happening within my lifetime, like, I can't imagine to see, what'll happen in the next 20, 30, and 40 years
Right.
in
It
the
gives
in the
you
world of
hope.
medical advances. So, so it's really, really great that you are out there and doing great things to raise awareness and educate people about your condition and other people who live with CCHS.
Thank you. I really appreciate your words, and I love all the advocacy that you do. I love being around like other disabled advocates in general because it underscores a fact that we don't always see in the abled world, and that is that disabled people are talented. Disabled people are hardworking. Disabled people are smart, capable, resourceful, and a benefit to their communities overall. We deserve treatment, we deserve investment, we deserve compassion and research. And this is even more true for people like me with rare diseases.
It's so true, and that is the real true core reason why I started my OurView company and this podcast, to show people that those who live with disabilities, we are active people. We
Mhm.
we do things, like you said, you have a full-time job, and it's, we live independently, and we just do so many things um that are not often seen. People don't
Mhm.
often get a chance to experience that. So that's why I love having a guest on to share their individual stories, and you're here to share your your story today. So I'm very grateful that that I have this platform to do just that and let those around the world know that, as you said, we are out here and we're doing things.
Absolutely. I feel like the biggest lesson that I learned last year is that we tend to the communities that have tended to us. So as I have benefited from the disability community, now I must give back and lift other voices up, especially considering that, aside from the life-threatening rare illness, I have lots of privileges that other people don't. And those privileges or lack thereof have also have major influences on life outcomes. I'll talk more soon about how disabled communities are sources of strength, uh, but having CCHS impacts me because it makes me see just how interconnected we all are. The disability advocate and writer Alice Wong tells us the narrative trajectory of our lives is necessarily webbed, right? Like we are all interconnected. We see that when we think about the number of people and number of incredibly diverse voices that are part of the disability community. Arthur, something you touched on in our pre-show chatter is that you're also getting to talk to or have talked to other people with CCHS. And I think that's very important because disability has no one voice and it has no one culture. It's very important to capture those different perspectives.
Yeah. Um, and part of your advocacy work and your part of educating people about CCHS, you shared with me that you are well, you did serve on the board of directors for the CCHS Family Network,
Yes.
which is, that's really great. So can you share with us what the CCHS Family Network is and how they serve families that are impacted by this diagnosis?
Of course. The CCHS Family Network is the only federally recognized nonprofit organization for people and families dealing with congenital central hypoventilation syndrome. This organization was started by my own mom. So we've been in operation for like 20, 25 years plus. The CCHS Family Network raises money for CCHS research, connects CCHS families to one another, connects CCHS families to researchers and specialists, which goes directly towards improving quality of life and treatment and care outcomes. And we also provide in-person and more and more these days, especially these days, virtual ways for families to connect. As a millennial who grew up a lot in virtual communities, I know how integral those online groups can be to social and emotional health for disabled people. I personally talk to someone else with CCHS probably every day, if not, multiple times a day. We're a patient advocacy group, and I remain active in helping to onboard new families who, would be very scared about hearing that their newborn child has been diagnosed with this condition, and then feeling very isolated in terms of being alone and in terms of not having a lot of information right at the ready. So I also am somewhat responsible in curating our online spaces, our Facebook groups, our online events, and then creating informational content about CCHS. So last Sunday, I just moderated a panel discussion about independent life with CCHS, where we had people with CCHS on talking about some of the successes they've had and some of the challenges they faced. And then we also heard from parents of people with CCHS who talked about how, it is scary to let go of your independent disabled adult child, but it's also, important to respect their personhood, their choices, and um, their agency, I guess is the word for it. Uh, Thanks to what I've learned during my 6 years on the board of the CCHS network, I've excuse me, I've gone on to chair my own board, and I just got reappointed to that position. I've done work with Global Genes, the National Organization for Rare Diseases, or NORD. I gave a TED talk once. I speak at a lot of town halls and other events that my employer puts on. So University of Pennsylvania. I'm a member of the Diversibility Leadership Collective. I've done the Elevate Disability Mentoring Program, and I've been inducted into the National Disability Mentoring Hall of Fame. So the skills that you learn in one position of leadership do translate into greater opportunities and more accomplishments down the road.
So I've been connected with a lot of my guests this season through Tiffany Yu with the Diversibility Leadership Connective, and yes, and I was really excited that in your conversations with you to prepare for this interview, you shared that you have an interest in disability and pop culture. And I thought that was really great. And I would like just for you to share a little bit of your thoughts about on how people with disabilities are portrayed in pop culture, and just talk about that for a little bit.
Sure. As much as possible, disabled roles on the big screen and small screen, and on stage, of course, should be portrayed by disabled performers. In general, when they pop up, disabled characters, they often reflect this binary view that I think a lot of ableds might have, and not maliciously so. But this binary view says disabled people, they're either pitiful, right? They're objects to be pitied, or they are inspirational because they've had to work so hard and overcome so much. And all of these cliches that I've heard and that I'm sure you've heard as well. So if those are the only two choices, then that really boxes in disabled roles and disabled performers. It reinforces assumptions and limitations about disabled bodies and also disabled experiences. I think that I've found, and perhaps you have as well, that most disabled people lie somewhere on a spectrum between, dare I say, pitiful and inspirational, or we are on entirely different axes already. So maybe it is inspiring that I've done all of this work, and that I give these talks and I connect with other advocates. But it's inspirational because of those actions. It's not inspirational because I'm disabled, which I think is an important distinction, if a subtle distinction, to make. I do celebrate, getting back on topic, I do celebrate positive and realistic portrayals of disability experience. So I want to give a shout out to some recent examples. I think the Oscar-nominated film Coda is one. Other movies and shows like that make me more hopeful for the future of disability representation than what we perhaps have gotten in the past, shall we say. I'm a big nerd, right? And two genres that I consume a lot of content from are sci-fi and fantasy. So while there are positive portrayals of disability out there, I think about also the crowds who flock to the cinema or who stream the latest X-Men movie, right? And thousands, perhaps millions of those people are going to see Professor X in a wheelchair without really diving into what that's realistically like. I'm a real big X-Men fan, and I have been for a few years. And I keep thinking about Professor X. I think about how the portrayal of his wheelchair use, again, seems to be a very limited and binary kind of perspective. When he's out of the wheelchair, if he gets dumped on the floor, if someone throws him out of the wheelchair, then he's completely helpless. It reinforces this perspective that people who use wheelchairs have to be using them all the time. Nowhere do we hear that Professor X also experiences like chronic pain or muscle spasms or any of the other side effects or symptoms that you might encounter if you are a wheelchair user or you know someone who is a wheelchair user. I think also about, I'm not sure what this trope is called. I'm not sure if it even has a name, but I'll give you an example. A character becomes disabled. They, for example, get their arm cut off and they receive a replacement that enhances their ability beyond that of a normal human. Think about Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's got like a metal arm, but that gives him super strength and it gives him more prowess in melee combat. It turns him into this superhuman, this super soldier. When in reality, limb prosthetics aren't at that same level of capability. I got my start with disability advocacy traveling around to different comic conventions and giving talks about disability representation in comic books or in anime or in fandom in general. So this is something I could talk about forever.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I think it's really great what you said. I know I think in my previous season, I think it was last season maybe, I had a filmmaker on, Allison, and we were talking about disability representation in film.
Mhm.
And we were talking about old examples of like Rain Man and um, how people, when they see movies, that might be their only example of what a person with living with autism, or as you use the example, a person using a wheelchair might be.
Yes.
Seeing this
Yes.
movie, so then when they see somebody with autism or a wheelchair user in real life, they only have that one example or those few examples
Mhm.
they saw in movies where, as you said, the person in the wheelchair is just completely helpless, and that they have to use the wheelchair all the time. That's why, getting back to like current times with social media, you see a lot of disabled content creators in on TikTok, I've noticed, where they'll be a wheelchair user but they'll do something and they'll be able to move their leg, so people will claim, oh, you must be faking your disability if you can move your leg. Well, not all wheelchair users are paralyzed, are paraplegic, or
Mhm.
quadriplegic. Some wheelchair users, like myself, have diagnoses like spina bifida, where
Right.
I can walk for short distances. So I
Mhm.
can move my leg muscles. I can't stand and put pressure on them without my braces on, but
Mhm.
I can flex my thigh muscles. So you might see that. I can't wiggle my toes though. So it's really, it can be very harmful to those within the disability community to not have the accurate representation, in things such as movies or TV and on stage and in comic books, like you said. I think that's I love that. I'm not a comic book fan, so I don't know much about it, but I think that's a very interesting perspective to bring into it, where it would be great to see some more representation in all of these areas for sure of people with disabilities, um, and different types of disabilities as well, not just the quadriplegics or the paraplegics,
Right.
because again, there are many other conditions that people have that require them to use a wheelchair at times. So I think that would, I think that's a really good, good examples that you brought up there, and Professor X, right?
That's
That's
correct.
yeah, that was that's really interesting to think of it in that way, when he's, if he's knocked out of his chair, he just can't do anything, when that may or may not be the case for a lot of people.
Correct.
Yeah, because I can get on and in and out of my wheelchair without any assistance as well. So it's No, I think I really wanted to talk about that with you, just to get your input and your perspective on it. So I'm glad you shared that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nuanced portrayals of disability are essential.
Hmm.
It's essential that we have diverse portrayals of disability, even contradictory portrayals of disability. Ultimately, we can't be what we can't see. So, you know, that's why it's important.
Absolutely. So I'm so glad that, again, that you shared your story and your experiences with us today on the podcast, and I thank you for your time, and just
Of course.
for just being so open, and for sharing about the work that you're doing. That is so important in so many different ways, and just getting the word out there about your condition, and how it impacts you, and how you are still living a full and productive and successful life with with your rare condition. And it's just it's really great. And I love what you said also, that all of the things that you've done, they're inspiring because of the things that you've done, not just because of you having a disability. And that is so important to say, because I I've heard the story many times through people that I know who have disabilities, and people that have been on the podcast, where we get told that we're inspirations just for going grocery shopping, or
Mhm.
just I think it's cool that like in a person in like my case, where my legs don't work, I can have hand controls and drive a car. Like,
Mhm.
that's cool. Like, that has to be cool to see for somebody who has never seen it before. So I I can't I can't knock that. Like, that has to be cool and very interesting, and sometimes um I guess maybe a little bit confusing, and also inspiring to see someone with as a wheelchair user getting out of the driver's seat of a car. Um,
Absolutely.
so that, and I love the conversations that I can have about that when I'm at the store and somebody says, "Oh wow, like that's really cool that you drive," and I can
Mhm.
show them my hand controls and educate them, and not shame them about anything. So I think that
Right.
is that's the approach that I like to take. I like to use those situations as educational moments to uh, raise their awareness about different conditions, and uh, different things that are possible for people who have disabilities. So again, thank you for the work that you're doing, and I definitely look forward to staying in touch with you, and making some things happen in our local area. As I said, we're very close geographically, so it makes perfect sense, and it would be great to work with you. So
Absolutely. Please
yes,
pass along any like activist groups you hear of.
yes, definitely. So Nico, thank you for your conversation today, and again for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Uh, Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I will wrap up by saying that disability history and disability strength are found in community. We are a very community driven movement. So, patient advocacy groups like the CCHS Family Network, like the Diversity Leadership Collective, those are a very natural second family or found family for me. Um, as you know, under 20% of disabled Americans work full time, like under 10% of us have a college degree or higher. The vast majority of us, something upwards of 60%, rely upon benefit programs like EBT or Social Security payments. 3.5 million Black women live with a disability, and I think about 40% of Black people with a disability live in poverty. So we're overlooked in terms of representation, and we're underserved in terms of services. But now is the time, especially given the ongoing pandemic. Now is the time for us to band together, to speak up. We need to start that accessible future, that compassionate future, and leading with all the values that we want the future to have.
Absolutely. And before we do wrap up, can you share where people can find you? on social media where they can follow you, if you have a website or anything like that you would like to mention.
Absolutely. On Twitter and on Instagram, I am at name starts with N. No spaces, all one word. Name starts with N. I look forward to connecting with all of you listening.
Yeah, great. So thank you, Nico, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Arthur. It was my pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. I want to make sure that this podcast is as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions or any topics you would like for me to address in an upcoming episode, be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at OurView for Life. That's OurView, the number 4, LIFE. You can also email me, ourviewforlife@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.